Welcome to our podcast today. I have an inspirational healing journey and one of our clients actually. Her name is Sylvia and she's gone through a lot with her skin. Today we're going to hear her story of how she overcame her flares, especially when it was most severe. And we're going to hear her journey of what she did to conquer her flares. And I'm really excited to have you here today, Sylvia. Welcome to the show and welcome to the Eczema podcast.
Thank you, Abby. Happy to be here and happy to share my journey because it's interesting, but yeah, everyone has their own journey. So
for sure. And just to start off with, why don't you tell our listeners your story and how long you've been battling eczema for, what your story is, and all the different things that you've tried before as well.
Sounds good. So I'll try to make it short, but I was born with eczema and I had it all over my body. My brother and sister also had the same thing. We had a lot of food allergies when we were born, including cow's milk. So we actually grew up having goat's milk to be sustained, and we're allergic to soy sauce, tofu, shrimp, so many different things. But my mom was not having it, and she just said, you know what, I'm gonna feed you all a little bit at a time, just so we wouldn't be fully allergic to these items. And I think thankfully she did her own, what is it in the medical world, like some sort of allergen immersion, process, but she just did her own thing, and that's how we were able to not have as many allergies growing up. And as a kid into teenage years, our eczema wasn't as bad. It wasn't full body. It was mostly concentrated in certain areas, maybe like behind the knees, arms, etc. Yeah, it was never too terrible. It was just more about the food allergies, and the food allergies that stayed is fish and goat cheese, surprisingly. So I can't have goat milk or cheese at all anymore, and Brazilian nuts. And as I've gotten older, things have changed in terms of my eczema and food allergies. I also have nasal allergies, of course, reactive to some grass, trees, and dust, of course. Cats, pretty normal from my eczema sufferer. But I would say in my 20s, it was pretty normal, just certain patches of eczema. But then leading into my 30s and now 40s, it fluctuates when, of course, I'm most stressed. And what I've dealt with most that I've struggled with is my hands. So I have I can't quite remember that type of eczema where there's not pus filled, but there's little
blisters, the dyshydrotic.
Yes. I had that in the hands, and that was my biggest pain point. And what I've tried then, because it was so terrible, where I had the fissures, it split a lot, I barely wash my hands, and I don't really do much with my hands. I actually went to see TCM, and that was probably the first part of what got me to where I am of trying all these different things. But I did the TCM, did the hand soak with herbs, and it made my hands look like a mummy, and I couldn't even bend my fingers. And I had to take time off from work and have my parents take care of me and go back to my parents' house for that. And it healed, it got better, but it was still never completely gone. And then I would say my hands were numb, but never to that level of degree. And I think it hit a point where, going back to the steroids, I used steroids up until my teenage years. And I heard from somewhere that it's just not good for you, so I stopped. But then what I leaned heavily on was Protopic, which I didn't realize that there were withdrawal symptoms from that. So I continued using Protopic until 2020, actually, to just manage some of those symptoms that were starting to flare up more, mainly on my face and my hands. But only until 2020 did I start developing gluten sensitivity, and even more foods like eggs. And that was the point where I thought, okay, I need to make a change to my diet. So I made a change to my diet and did whole foods, non-processed diet and really limiting sugar intake as well. I actually just didn't really have that much in general. But in that year, I had a lot of what we call traditionally known as healthy, like brown rice, bone broth, flax seeds, chia seeds. I ate oatmeal consistently and all these things. And after 2020, so 2021, I developed food sensitivities to all these things I ate a lot of in 2020. So now I have additional food allergies. I was like, okay, I know something's up. So I started seeing a naturopath to figure out what was going on. And unfortunately, I don't think that naturopath really specialized in eczema, and he didn't quite help me to where I needed to go in terms of my healing. It did push me to go see a allergist and a dermatologist, a traditional one, to get a food sensitivity and allergy test and also a skin patch test to really understand what I'm reactive to. So once I got those results, I did a deep cleaning of understanding what products that I put on my body was impacting me. And it was actually my body soap that I've used for years and years and years, which was the Dove sensitive soap. I think it was a glucoside in it that was making me reactive. So yeah, I was actually at a loss because I had to change all my skincare products that I bought bulks in, right? Like in Costco, I was like, oh, let me save some money and buy like the 10 pack, etc. But when you're so used to using a certain product to support your well-being, you're like, well, I don't. And there's a whole testing process to make sure, you buy something new, it works for you. So I think I was at a loss and I didn't know necessarily how to begin. But anyways, I cleared up all my products and I started Googling a bunch of stuff. I'm like, okay, if these are the things that I'm reactive to, the doctor actually gave me an app to help sort out. It will provide you the products that don't have all your allergens listed. It wasn't foolproof, but it was a start. So 2021 is when I really tried a bunch of natural products, not necessarily easily found in Target or your local drugstore or grocery store. But when I did that, I also was really mindful of how I ate. Knowing how I ate the same things consistently in 2020 created a bunch of food allergies. I know it's not a one-to-one correlation, but it did make me think I need a variety and I need to mix it up with the things that I can't eat so I don't develop additional food sensitivities. So after I saw a naturopath, I think for 3 to 6 months or so, then I was like, this is not working. I'm gonna see a TCM and someone who specializes in eczema. And this was the last thing I did before I found out about eczema conquerors. And what was crazy at that time was very familiar with boiling the herbs and drinking it, and because that's what I grew up having from just my mom and what she believes in medicine as well. And the crazy part of it is that the TCM got me to a place where I was just really detoxing and getting rid of that high level of inflammation in my body. And at a point I lost my eyebrows and I looked really sickly. Because my body was so inflamed from everything, I don't even know what it was necessarily. Probably years of all the crappy eating. Like I had Flamin' Hot Cheetos, all the processed foods, and thankfully I didn't put a lot of makeup, but just noting all the things that I put in my body and on my body, it's just, really thinking everything. But my body was so inflamed that I lost my eyebrows, my ears were oozing, I constantly had to put tissue just throughout the day to manage that. Even my neck was oozing. The sleeping schedule was kind of interesting and how to manage that, and just my overall temperature. And there's definitely oozing on my hands and my arms. I would say those are the main parts. Oh,
It sounds like when you started seeing the TCM doctor, it was actually making your skin worse rather than helping it get better.
Yeah, I think it was, and that's how I did see it at first, but then I think how I got through it, because I think that's the hardest part, right? Knowing that maybe I just latched onto the idea of it usually gets worse before it gets better. And I thought, even though I started using Protopic instead of using the traditional steroids, I didn't realize that I had a withdrawal period. I think that's what it was. But I was using steroids for quite a bit, even in my childhood. So I know there's that. So I just felt like at that time, everything was just coming up from the years of pent up in my body, etc. And yeah, I would say that was probably the roughest time. And I would have to pull my hair back, tie it up all the time, because any hair that would touch my face or my neck, it would just be so itchy or like bothersome that I can't do anything else. And it definitely affected my self-esteem and how I carried myself and just do things in general. And I just have to remind myself, this is a part of the process. And just really be mindful of the things I ate in case if it made it worse.
That must have been so traumatic for you, and I'm sorry you went through that, because I went through something very similar where I had seen a previous TCM doctor, and I only just found out recently that she didn't have that much experience with, like, she studied herbal medicine, but it wasn't like for years and years, and so it actually made my skin severely worse. And I also have been through what you mentioned, like losing the eyebrows and oozing from the ears, oozing from the skull. It couldn't turn my neck, and just like everything hurting and feeling so uncomfortable. And so I've been where you are, and I relate to how you must have felt at that time, and just feeling so discouraged and traumatic by the experience, even though it seemed like it was detoxing for you.
Yeah, was it? I mean, is it detoxing? It is, right?
I think it depends on what the TCM doctor is working on, because the previous one that I had worked with, I think mine got worse because she wasn't as experienced or specialized in working with the skin. And with cases like mine, I had many doctors and TCM doctors tell me theirs was the worst they had ever seen. And so I think on the one hand, yes, I've heard of some cases where the skin gets worse before it gets better because it's detoxing and pushing things out. Whereas I've also heard of cases like mine where the doctor just wasn't specialized enough or experienced enough, and it actually made things worse. And so I think there can be those two branches. But then again, I've also worked with another TCM doctor who I later worked with as well. And she had like 30-40 years of experience, and she specialized in the skin. So she actually did help my skin get better. And so I feel like everyone's is so different based on how experienced the TCM practitioner is.
Because it makes me think about Justin's protocol, where he gives me things to support me when I am detoxing, right? So there's a balance to try to make you not feel the effects of the detoxing as much. Maybe that's what's coming up to my mind right now.
For sure. And let's actually move on and talk about that as well. So how was your state of skin when you first came to see us? And yeah, let's hear more about your story and how we started to help support you on your healing journey.
So when I joined Eczema Conquerors, at that point, my skin was rough on my face, my neck, my ears, my arms, some of my torso, and my legs. So it was not comfortable, and I wasn't able to wear anything that covered my neck. And I definitely didn't wear earrings or anything and barely any makeup as well.
And did it ever get better from the TCM doctor, or was it the same state?
It was at that state that I left them. So it did get better in the sense that I think my eyebrows grew back before I left them. I think at that point, whether it's true or not, I convinced myself that a lot of the inflammation has died down, and that was the purpose of seeing TCM.
And so yeah, let's talk about when we first started working together. I know that you mentioned that you weren't in a comfortable state. And so let's talk about what our team ended up working with for you. Do you remember some of the things that your protocol worked on, or some of the root causes that we worked on as well that you want to share with our listeners?
Yeah, so I think I did 4 protocols, but yeah, that first one, I think what was identified was I had a lot of metal, and specifically I had a root canal. So there's something related to my tooth that was tied to, I think there was still that inflammation finally that I need to get rid of in my system to be balanced.
Yeah, and actually just seeing from your tissue mineral analysis, there was some heavy metal levels that were elevated as well. It wasn't super high, but we did see that it was elevated. Yeah. And so I know before we started recording, you mentioned that you'd also be comfortable with sharing some of the things that we worked on. And I think a lot of our listeners would be interested as well. So I'll share some of those things because I think a lot of people will be really encouraged and inspired to know how you went from the state that you shared about, where things were just really painful and oozing, to where you are now, where your skin has healed so much. And actually, how many % would you say your skin has healed at the moment?
I would say, I can't remember what I shared previously. I would say it's 90%.
That's quite a lot.
Yeah.
And that's amazing as well. And how long did it take you to get 90% improvement for your skin?
I think, so I started the program last April 2023, and it probably took me until September, October. And it might seem short, but what I will just share as well is I've been on this journey of eating really healthy and being very mindful of what I'm eating, and also maintaining a healthy lifestyle. So I stopped drinking. I don't really have caffeine. I drink warm water most of the time. That's my beverage of choice. I try to sleep enough every night, and I try to exercise pretty, enough per week, like cardio or strength training. So that has been my practice, and I think that has made me more successful compared to someone who's trying to still have processed foods and have some kind of not so great habits. So I think that really propelled me to see those results quicker, in my opinion.
That's great to hear. And do you also remember if you're going through a lot of stress that contributed to it as well, like the initial flares?
Yes, for sure. I think huge learning process was just understanding how I manage stress, or how I react to stress, and finding ways to combat that, right? And not affect your nervous system as much. And of course, triggering, more flares, or just be in that constant state. And alongside, it just really made me think about just understanding myself more in these aspects, not only in terms of my lifestyle, but how am I managing my stress, and doing therapy. Talk therapy is such a lifesaver in terms of just helping you manage your emotions and understanding yourself, but with meditation. So those two things, to me, on top of the healthy diet, along with this program, is probably what made me, successful, or made this successful for me.
That's so great to hear. And that's really interesting as well, because we actually have so many clients who come to us with trauma. And there's times where we feel that there's so many trapped emotions that it is preventing them from finding healing. And that trauma that's stuck there is also preventing their healing. And so many times we'll mention that it would help for them to see a psychologist or psychotherapist, and just to talk it out and really work on that trauma. And we don't recommend it for everyone, depending on because it depends on how much trauma they've been through. But for the people that we do recommend it for, we notice that not all of them will seek that therapy. But for those who do, we notice a big improvement for those who actively get out and work on it. And we had one person where we really identified that she really just needed the therapy and the support. And we actually didn't think she was going to get it, because not all our clients do end up getting it. And so she actually ended up getting it, and she noticed a huge difference in her skin and improvement. And so that, combined with the protocols that we gave, were just like, wow, like it makes a huge difference when we address trauma.
I mean, I personally believe if you aren't processing your emotions, especially trauma, it's getting trapped in your body and it's going to manifest itself in a physical form. And I truly believe that eczema is a part of it for me. And I think it's actually part of ancestral trauma from my mom. And I know exactly what was going on based on what she's told me when she had me, my brother and sister. She was not in a good place. And it just transferred that eczema to us. And my parents don't have eczema. My dad has food allergies, but I find it just very interesting and curious about that connection. But how it tipped me off to understand myself and go through talk therapy is having that thought that if we don't process our emotions, it's going to show up in our body physically.
For sure.
It took me to take some classes on intuitive medicine. But yeah, if there's more questions about that, and people are curious, the book that I got into was the Anatomy of Spirit. I believe that's the book. But
and there's another book that I've heard of that's really good too, and it's called The Body Keeps Score.
Oh, that's for the people with a lot of trauma. Yes.
That one's on my list to read as well. But yeah, I think what you're also referring to is generational trauma. And I've heard a lot about that as well. And actually, some of our clients, very interestingly, it's their family that actually that triggers their flares. And so when they're with their family and like just like certain arguments that they have, we notice that it triggers their flare. And so the person I was referring to specifically earlier, the example, when she went through therapy, she was noticing a flare whenever she would, just have those arguments with her mom. And so the therapy really, really helped them a lot, and it made such a huge improvement. Like even after 1 or 2 sessions, which I find that to be pretty fast. I don't think everyone sees improvements that fast, but just 1 or 2 sessions and they noticed a huge improvement. And we had one other client where her son was triggering her skin to flare. And whenever he would say mean words to her, it would cause her skin to erupt.
Yeah, I mean, I completely understand that. And I would say within the year that I was doing this program, I was also trying to understand my triggers. And maybe the reason why that client of yours only took 1 to 2 sessions, because she really understood, and it shed so much light for her that she was leading up to it and then understood, and it clicked, and she's like, okay, I gotta do something about this now. I feel like that's where we want everyone to be, right? But talk therapy, if your health insurance covers it and you are, at least most of it, mine does, everyone should do it. I don't care who it is, whether you think you have trauma or not, everyone has a little bit.
I've started doing something called EMDR therapy. You've done it? It's really well known for helping you process like trauma from the past. And so I've been doing EMDR and like, wow, after 1 session, like all those like really painful traumatic memories are just neutralized, and it feels so much better. And so that's one that I found very effective, and I've had a few friends who have been doing that as well.
I've been doing it as well because my therapist does specialize in that, in a few other modalities of just healing trauma, and it's fascinating. I personally love this stuff, and in terms of like just trying to understand yourself and heal yourself and be your best version, whether it's physically or emotionally, mentally. So this is my wheelhouse. But what we'll also share is that my parents are immigrants. My dad's from China, my mom's from Hong Kong, and they grew up with having to just survive before they immigrated here. So a lot of that, they don't know necessarily emotional intelligence to pass that on to us as kids, right? But a lot of what they dealt with as in their childhood and just getting over here, they have not fully processed even to this day. So because children of immigrants, we're going to carry some of that trauma from them. and you don't even realize it. I think children of immigrants, if you haven't already, another reason to do therapy, and I'm just such a big advocate in that. But if you don't believe in it and you don't feel like it will help you now, I don't think it's a good time for you to do it when you feel like it is resonating.
That's actually really interesting you mentioned that, because my parents are also immigrants as well. And I just found out recently that my great grandmother and my grandmother were both in the war between Japan and China. And so they lived during that time, and they were so poor because a lot of them didn't have money for food, and a lot of them were going through starvation. And so both my grandmother and my grandfather, their siblings actually passed away during that war, and they were the only ones alive. And I found out that my great grandmother was so poor at that time that she actually sold my grandmother. And so she sold her, and then my grandmother was only like 3 or 4 years old at that time. And somehow, like, luckily she managed to escape, and she ran back to my great grandmother. And so that's how my mom was born, and thankfully their lineage continued. But you're right, like they still don't know how to open up, and there's a lot of generational trauma that comes along with it as well.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to laugh, because I'm laughing more of like how much people don't realize this actually impacts us in our life now. And I am laughing because it's just the reality of it, but how big of an impact it can have on us. And I don't think people think about that and how it does.
Yeah, and I know you have to go soon, so I'll share some of what we worked on for your protocol as well, because I think that combined with the therapy was really helpful as you were sharing. So let me share about some of the areas of focus that we worked on. So some areas that we focused on working on for you was your adrenal health. We know that the adrenals help you cope through stress, and when our adrenals get taxed, then it affects our ability to cope through that stress. And when the adrenals are out of balance, the thyroid can also go out of balance as well. And when the thyroid and adrenals get affected, it also starts to slow down the metabolism in our body, especially when the thyroid becomes slower. So that in turn affects our circulation. So we actually have many clients, and myself included because I've gone through this, where when our adrenals are taxed, our thyroid is out of balance, that affects our circulation, and our skin gets drier. We're not able to get as many nutrients to the skin because the circulation and metabolism are affected. So some of the things that we helped work on for you was actually your adrenal health, your thyroid health as well. And we also worked on your circulation, just helping those nutrients and oxygen to get delivered to the rest of your body. And sometimes some people might find that your hands or feet are the last to heal, and one of the reasons can also be because it also furthest away from your heart, and sometimes the nutrients can get delivered there last as well. And also some of the other things that we worked on for you was also to help support your nervous system, to also give good back to your body and to nourish your skin as well, but also to help support your lymphatic system, because that helps cleanse and remove toxins from your body. We also help to support your liver, because the liver helps with detoxing and the detoxification process as well. But we also help with, as you mentioned, some of the heavy metals, just helping to pull out some of that from the body, because that in turn can affect the thyroid, that can in turn affect your skin health as well, even if the levels aren't super high, but sometimes there can be a buildup that can still affect the skin. And so, and overall, we basically supported your different organs, like your kidneys and liver that I was just sharing about, and just helping to support your emotions as well, especially through the flower essences, like the flower remedies. Those can be very helpful to support your different. And I saw that you also tried the blue, which I interviewed a naturopath about, and he shared that he has some of his clients on that too. So yeah, how did the methylene blue go for you? Did you notice your tongue turn blue, or how did you
Not
feel?
my tongue turned blue. It's more my urine, which was fun. It was more green. It came out green. I was like, oh wow, I'm radioactive right now.
So yeah, sorry, go on.
No, that was it.
Oh, and how did you feel on the rest of the protocols as you were on them? And when did you start to notice the difference in your skin? Sorry, which protocol did you notice the difference?
I think after the first one. Actually, no, probably after the second one. After the second one.
And with each protocol going, like as each protocol happened, how did you feel your skin changed?
I think it just slowly. What's interesting is like when your skin gets better, you kind of easily forget until someone points it out. And I think that's what happened. I was like, wow, how can I get to this point so quickly? But when I just noticed continuously or consistently that my neck, I was like, hey, my neck is clear. Nothing is coming up, and all the, the inflamed red, pink areas have gone away. And I didn't feel any strong sensation when one single hair tickled my neck or like on my face. And it was really amazing to realize it and see that.
That's amazing. And I'm so happy to hear that your skin got so much better and that it improved a lot too. And yeah, it's just really great to see that as your body was supported and the different organ systems, that your body got stronger and stronger. And so actually it's very interesting too, because some practitioners will only work on the gut, and some people will always say that it's all a gut issue. But you can see that for yours, we actually didn't work on the gut first. It was actually the other body systems that I was talking about, like the adrenals, the thyroid, lymphatic system, and even heavy metals. And so it was all of those things first. And so had we done gut work first, I don't know if we would have gotten the same results. And if practitioners only work on gut health, then we might be missing a bigger picture that could be happening, as was the case for you. And so you can start to see that there's so many different pieces of the puzzle. And I think yours is a really good example of how it's not always gut health that's the main cause, and it's not always the place that we start as well. And a large part of how we can figure out what's causing your root cause is through the symptoms that you share. Your unique story that you share as well can help us gather a lot of information, but also the different tests that we can do as well, like the hair tissue mineral analysis, the blood work as well. And so that can also tell a story. And I think that your symptoms were sharing a lot about what you were going through as well. And so yeah, it's just really happy for us to see your big improvement.
Yeah, and no, it's a good thing to know. And what I want to share is that that's what I really appreciate about this program, is that it's really understanding your symptoms and understanding how our body is working as a whole, and not just fixated on the general assumption that eczema is coming from the gut or whatever else. And I appreciate the program so much from understanding it from that level to help us heal. And I don't think I've seen anything else or heard of anything else that's as comprehensive, and that's what made me sign up. And also, and just to note, I offered to speak on this about my journey because I feel like eczema conquerors, everyone should do this if they're suffering from eczema. If they're able to, they should. And this is probably the best program I've ever been a part of. Like when it comes to the sense of community that we're tapped into with everyone else who signed up, and just the support and videos and help teaching us how to properly just manage our symptoms and our emotions. Just everything is fantastic. So that's why I decided to speak about my journey and also about what my journey was through this program.
Thank you. That really means so much. I'm like about to cry. So thank you so much for just sharing that, and even offering to share your story with others who are listening, because it truly means so much. And one thing I want to emphasize is two things. Number one, it's not to say that the gut still can't have a role. It's just that sometimes there's other root causes that can be affecting the gut. And once we help to support those areas like your thyroid and adrenals and circulation in this case, the more it can also help your overall body systems as well. And number two is it's so wonderful that you got better so quickly. And in some cases, some people do take longer. Like I know in my case, I took a really long time. After I gave birth, it took me like 5 years to see improvement and to feel better. And I know some people get better so much faster. And so if you're on this journey, just remember not to compare your journey with someone else's. And everyone takes a different time to heal and see improvement. But overall, Sylvia, we are so proud of you. And I know that you have to go soon, but anything else that made it different when you first started that made you want to join our program compared to trying something else that you may have looked into?
I was listening to your podcast for some time. I'm not sure how I found it, but just hearing your podcast and how you brought in all these different specialists and experts in their field and how it tied to eczema, it just blew my mind. It opened my eyes on how truly what holistic health is and how eczema is not a one-stop shop that our traditional allopathic medicine sees it as, right? I think once I heard those podcasts, I was like, this Eczema Conqueror program has to be the real deal. That's it. It sold me.
Wow, thank you so much. That really means a lot. And it's so wonderful to see that you got better so quickly. And we definitely have some clients who take longer as well. So just to put that expectation out there is that some people do take longer. But I'm so glad that yours got better so quickly, and now you're able to inspire and help others too, just like others who are listening right now to this. And any last words that you want to say before we go as well, or any last words or even advice for others?
I will say last words is, if you can, I know there's definitely a financial component to this. If you can and you've been suffering with eczema, you should definitely sign up for this program. They will support you and help you with the right specialist, and just having that sense of community that I don't think I've had anywhere else. It's truly amazing. And just hearing about this, the naturopaths and the practitioners that you work with who even specialize on women's health and who have gone through eczema healing themselves is what more can you ask for from someone to help you go through that process? And then as far as advice for others outside of that, I think truly what I feel like the secret to success is if you haven't dealt with some of your trauma or your issues, start with therapy. If not there, start with just making smaller changes to your lifestyle to be a little bit healthier, whether it's eating less processed foods or like changing out. Personally, this is why I think with your skincare routine and not necessarily putting things that might be a little bit too chemically or toxic, or maybe not too much makeup. Be more mindful of what you put on your body and in your body, and maybe exercising, going for a walk. All like talk therapy, exercising, the food, and also having the right people around you to support you. I feel like all of that meditation is what I feel was most helpful for me outside of just this program. So
thank you for sharing that. That's amazing. Oh, and one last tip that I mentioned that I would share with everyone as well is that you were sharing about a dandruff shampoo bar that's really helped your scalp and the seborrheic dermatitis get better is one called Derm Essentials Therapeutic Soap. It is more of a natural one that you shared about, can take longer than using something conventional. But I know you shared it was something that helped you get better. So hopefully that quick tip and encouragement can help others who are listening as well. Thank you so much, Sylvia. I really appreciate you for being on the show today and for sharing your story. It's so encouraging, and now you're able to help others who are going through this.
Thank you, Abby, for having me and creating this amazing program so others can benefit from what you learned and built. So thank you so much.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much, Sylvia. And I hope everyone listening has felt encouraged. And don't forget that if you want to learn more about our program, you can head to the link in the description or either on my website, eczemaconquerors.com. and you can head to the menu bar and book a complimentary breakthrough call with one of the eczema advisors on my team. And we'd be happy to support you and let you know what's missing on your healing journey and see how we can support you and let you know about some of the tests that we do as well. So thank you so much for everyone who's listening. And thank you again, Sylvia, for being here. I really appreciate your time, and I hope everyone has a great week.